Okay, there's a couple of design sketching tricks that I think are important to have in your toolbox to follow along with some of the tutorials that I'm trying to build up to right now. So, relatively quickly, because this should look familiar to anyone who's taken some of my other classes, if I have a plane in perspective, and I'm just using the perspective grid tools in Procreate to make this quick. If I have a plane in perspective, I can, by connecting the corners of that plane, as long as I do it relatively accurately, it doesn't have to be perfect, but closer the better, find the center point of that plane. That's great. As long as I have the center point of that plane, and I can keep my perspective, which using Procreate is very easy because I can lock it, I can now find center lines of that plane. So I have effectively divided this plane into 4 corners, 4 quadrants, which gives me where those center lines connect in perspective going off in other directions, right? This all makes sense. With this, because of geometry, we can do a lot of very useful things, one of which is continuing this shape as it diminishes into the distance or increases into the foreground in relative size to the viewer. So if I want to duplicate this plane, going off in this direction, keeping it same relative size, I can extend the lines out towards the vanishing point off in the distance, take that front corner, instead of connecting it to the back corner, now connect it to where that center line meets that trailing edge, and then extend that out until it hits this back extension line here. And then if I carry that over, that is another duplicate of that first plane. And you can do this really indefinitely. Oops. As long as your lines don't go horizontal on you. The only problem being that, of course, there is some small tolerance stack up because of stuff like this, where my line work is not necessarily perfect. And yours won't be either. No one's is, because perfect is not a thing you should shoot for as an artist or designer, because you'll lose your mind. So you can keep doing this indefinitely in any given perspective direction. But over time, very tiny, like 1 pixel errors will start to add up, and things will get a little bit screwy if you do it like 100 times without really zooming in and getting it just pixel perfect. But generally speaking, you very rarely have to actually do that. For anything you're really working on, helps if I carry that center line out. There we go. Great. The other thing we can do, oh, and by the way, this works for duplicating 3-dimensional shapes as well. Because not only can I do this in multiple orientations, if I wanted to continue that box that way, but also since I've duplicated that top plane, that isn't even necessary. First of all, because I could just carry the center lines down like that. Hooray. But then also, I've duplicated that top plane, so I could just do that. 1, 2, 3. And then I didn't actually find that back line, but it doesn't really matter. There you go. You can just continue these boxes off into the distance forever. Great. I can also use this to duplicate more complicated features as long as I've captured them within a plane of some sort like that. So, for example, if I want to bevel off this front edge, because I'm going to make, a chamfered box or something. That would be some shape like that. But I also want to bevel off this backside here. Well, I can mirror using this technique. I'm going to go ahead and take away the extrusion real quick. Since I've got this front edge, I now have 3 very useful points of data. I know where this line meets this X, this cross line. I also know where these 2 points are on the edge of my plane. Using that and my perspective, first of all, I can just take this point, carry it back to where it meets its corresponding point right there. Now that's going to be harder to do with this front one, right? Well, I've got this back one. In this instance, this works fine. Because if I could just connect those 2 lines, then by consequence, that other line is right there. Or that other point is right there. And I have now effectively mirrored that cut. Excellent. And of course, again, all of this also works in other orientations. If I was cutting this, I could divide up this surface and do the same thing. Cut it like, now I just want to do it. I'm just going to do it. Sorry. There. We've got a front X. Okay, well, we're going to carry that point up. I'm going to carry that point up, and boom. There we are. So that is, as you can imagine, very, very useful, especially when you start combining it with the duplication technique and with working in multiple orientations. As I build these next couple of courses and different examples using this in practice, I think you're going to see me use it quite a lot. I started recording some stuff and I was like, you know what, I was going to try and do these in the moment, but I actually think these are worth covering way ahead of time, just on their own and as an isolated example. So that's why we're here. And this is a little bit off the cuff, but hopefully, I'm going to go ahead and pump that. Hopefully very useful. I use this almost constantly when I'm doing hard surface design work. So vehicles, mechs, actual products. I'm doing a lot of game art these days, but also use it like crazy for actual industrial design work. Use it either in pen and paper or digital, doesn't matter. The geometry is geometry. Come on. Sometimes that shortcut gets really picky. I don't know why. It kind of drives me crazy. It's a custom shortcut, so I guess it's not like fine-tuned, but it's an option. They gave me the option. It should work pretty well. Whatever. Procreate's a pretty great program. Just every once in a while it does something silly. Yeah. So now we've duplicated that little edge chamfer there. Confidently in perspective. That's quite handy. You can also, while I've got you here, bonus mode, use these techniques. I shouldn't have erased all that because I'm going to use it, so I'm just going to back up real quick to find things. So let's say up here, I've got an elevation change, and in fact, this surface up here is shorter. It's only that wide going off into the distance. And I want to make a ramp that goes from here to here somehow, but I want to have like a feature or something that's still centered on those 2 things. I want the center lines to be correct. Well, I've already got all the pieces on the screen right now that I need for that. First of all, we've got the center line. We've got the vertical plane of that. I can just add a construction plane back here, turn this into a plane very quickly. This is an example I've actually... Ooh, that was weird. This is an example I've actually used before, or run into and had to figure out kind of on the fly. It probably looks weird in abstract right now, but it will come up when I'm doing like starships and stuff in some of these future tutorials. But there, now I have, in effect, I'll darken it up for us. Okay, come on. Why? I think something about recording makes some of the inputs a little bit more persnickety. That wasn't the reason I was saying why is because my pencil was nowhere near that spot on the screen. And I'm wearing a glove so my hand doesn't interfere with anything, which is weird, but you know, I try for you. Anyways, what I was going to say is now I have, even though this ramp here is converging towards the top, it's narrower up here than it is down at the base, I still have the center line of it defined because I know the center point on this surface, and I know the center point now on this surface, and if I connect those two things, well, that is the center line all the way up this ramp. So anything I want to do to this ramp will come off of that center line. So if I wanted to, you know, build a curve into it or something, I can go, okay, well, I know I've got a starting point here and carry that across. That means I've got a starting point here. So if I take a point on that line and put it up into space a little bit, I can get frustrated with the shortcut. And then, okay, well, I know that that curve should be at its highest point on that top there. So as long as, okay, yeah, we've got a pretty good check there. That's math. You thought getting into art you wouldn't need to use geometry. You fools. It's not actually that bad. Still. You know, I can have some weird, you know, I don't know what that is, a duct, a scoop, maybe some sort of a hood scoop. Maybe it comes up like this and cuts off and it's sucking air down. I don't know. I just made a random shape for you. Forgive me, I didn't have a plan. Yeah, okay. I think that's enough rambling for this little tutorial. I hope you found it useful. I'm just kind of turning this into some kind of shape. It's some kind of something. I'm not sure what, but it's very what it is. There we go. Okay, that's enough. But those techniques were here's the fun part, class. The end recording button on the iPad hides about 2 pixels away from the color fill dot in Procreate. And sometimes, love you, Johnny Ive, but your gestures aren't actually always that good. I said it. I said what I said. I said what I said. Good night.